Outworld Destroyer.
You think you're indecisive? Odie can't even keep the same kit for longer than a few years, let alone the same name. This hero changes his skill effects more often than most celebrities change spouses. So keep this in mind if you're watching this a few months for the time of release, things may already be different. His innate gives him extra mana per point of intelligence. He can convert that mana into damage with his arcane orb, which empowers his auto attacks to deal extra damage based on Odie's remaining mana pool. This deals pure damage, letting it ignore resistances, and it costs a percentage of his current mana to use. That means he's always gonna have enough mana to use it, but it's not always gonna hurt. It's quite intensive on your blue bar. Thankfully, you have Essence Flux is another passive that gives Odie a chance to restore a percentage of his maximum mana after using an ability. This, combined with the fact that you'll always have mana for your orbs, means mana will almost never be an issue. The Obsidian Decimator facet gives Odie extra maximum mana after getting his mana restored by this ability. Scepter gives Odie what could be one of the strongest defensive abilities in the game. When he's low enough on health, he passively removes most debuffs, including stuns from his person, and gains a massive damage barrier equal to a percentage of his maximum mana. This makes him incredibly hard to kill if he has it available. His W, Astral Imprisonment, lets him banish a target unit, rendering them invulnerable and unable to act. Once they reappear, they also take some damage and Odie gets a percentage of their maximum mana if they're an enemy. You can also use the spell on allies or yourself, and don't worry, they won't get damaged nor experience the mana steal. This gives him a surprising amount of defensive utility. Shard makes the spell damage in an area upon finishing, and when banishing teammates, lets them move at a reduced speed while banished. His ultimate is Sanity's Eclipse, dealing damage based on the difference between Odie's mana and enemies affected by this ability. It deals bonus damage to illusions and can hit enemies trapped by your W. It's an AoE outplay button, use it after gaining enough mana and just win a fight straight up. The Overwhelming Devourer facet makes both this spell and his Astral apply a debuff to enemies that causes them to heal Odie every time they cast a spell that expends mana. For talents, I recommend the health at 10 since you're going to be stealing a lot of mana with your W anyway, though you might want to max your damage output, so I can see why you want the mana instead. The mana move speed at 15 is probably better, but I'm an Astral cast range believer because it's such a useful utility spell. Spell lifesteal at 20 for sustain and arcane orb damage at 25. As OD, you are a right clicker that builds mana. You just want to whack your enemies with your orbs and deal an insane amount of damage because they ignore resists. Astral is an insane utility spell. You can use it exclusively on enemies to steal mana, but don't forget you can also use it to save the lives of your teammates or yourself. I will say that you're gonna have to learn when to use it, because some ODs will use it at the wrong time and end up saving the lives of enemies instead. You can also use it in lane to be a bitch, Astral your lane opponent, and take the freest last hits of your life. OD is also one of Dota's best tank busters. Your raw damage from your orbs can ignore armor stackers like Timber and Axe, but you also have the utility of a save in your kit. This means you're also a really strong pick against heroes that want to blow up a single target, like Necrophos and Legion Commander. A special mention goes to Huskar, whom you destroy. Your Astral will save the life of a life break target, your orbs ignore his insane magic resistance and burst him down faster than he can regen, and your ult deals a ton of damage against him because he has no mana bar. But note, you can't steal mana from him. Odie's main weakness is the fact that you have very little AoE in your kit, and because of this, you don't really farm that fast, and it can take some time before becoming a huge threat. He has his ult, but dear god, please don't use that for farming, and his shard at 14 minutes that you really don't want to spend money on at that stage in the game. Naturally, this means that Odie's not the best pick against heroes like Broodmother or Meepo, and if your ultimate's down, illusion heroes can be a pain too. Oh, and be careful of Rubik. Astral is incredibly easy to steal, and giving that hero that level of utility can completely turn the tides of a game. I think Odie's current iteration is most powerful as a counterpick against certain heroes, like the ones mentioned above, but he's also strong if your team can use a secondary right clicker and a late game presence.
Puck!
One of the most skill expressive heroes in the game, a good puck can be annoying to face because of how slippery the hero is. How fitting, because the hero's name also rhymes with. Anyway, your first ability is your orb. You can throw it out and it travels in a straight line, and at any point while it's out, you can reappear at the orb's current location. The orb deals damage to targets hit by it. Curveball makes the orb faster and last longer and allows you to curve the orb's trajectory. It's the higher skill ceiling facet, and you can do some pretty crazy things with it if you're good. Waning Rift is Puck's W. Blink to a target location, dealing damage upon arrival and silencing affected enemies. The Jostling Rift facet makes the spell push or pull enemies as well, depending on how you want it to work. If you're new to Puck, yeah, just pick this one. Phase Shift lets Puck vanish, allowing them to dodge abilities and attacks. Shard gives them extra magic damage on its attacks and causes Puck to hit all enemies nearby with an auto every time it shifts. It's good because Puckish, their innate, gives Puck a bit of extra healing whenever they are able to disjoint attacks and targeted spells. Note that Phase Shift lasts just long enough at max level to let you blink out of a sticky situation, so you want to get Blink Dagger on this hero. Just make sure to remember which direction you're facing in. Otherwise, yeah, you're not getting out alive. Finally, Dream Coil leashes all targets in an area, dealing damage and preventing them from using movement abilities. If they move too far from the center, they break the coil, but are dealt damage again and are stunned. Scepter causes the coil to launch Puck's attacks at affected enemies. If you build like a right clicker, yeah, this can really hurt. For talents, take the orb damage at 10, but the silence duration against slippery enemies like the Spirit Brothers, Waning Rift damage at 15, Waning Rift cooldown at 20, Waning Rift stats at 25, and take the BKB piercing coil if you really need it. A well-played Puck is one of the most frustrating foes to face. With your orb and rift, you are all over the place in a team fight and can set the tempo with a well-placed Dream Coil. That being said, Puck's landing stage is kinda weak. Without coil, you have no real lockdown and rely on outplaying the enemy to get kills. Also, your auto attack and projectile speed takes some getting used to. You win lane by whittling down your enemies with your right clicks, orb and rift, and then you go in for the kill. As Puck, you don't want to face instant disables. Undodgeable abilities like Lion and Shadow Shaman's hexes, or even things like Shaker's Fissure from Fog can be really annoying for you to face. Also, Night Stalker completely fucks you over. As long as he pops W and stays on top of you, you are completely useless. Puck is a very honest hero. There's nothing in this hero's kit that makes it too overpowered, but if you're good, you can make it look absolutely busted. You're great in a team fight and in small skirmishes, and if you're built to hit, you can absolutely stun on these hoes with your Ags. And don't forget to orb before phase shifting, folks.
Queen of Pain.
This hero has one of the most deceptively high skill floors in the game. She has a pretty simple kit on paper, which we'll get to in a bit, but in reality, she's challenging to do well with if you don't know exactly what you're doing. She has an innate called Bondage that returns a portion of damage she takes from enemy spells back at the caster. It's nice to have for a bit of extra chip damage, but it's nothing to write home about. She can also choose between two facets that function as a second innate. Succubus gives you spell lifesteal that gets stronger when you're closer to your enemies, while Masochist makes your spells hurt more, but also causes a portion of your spell damage to be reflected back at you. Honestly, I'd go with the former because I like having no downsides, but the latter does increase your damage potential. For her abilities, let's start off with Scream of Pain, which is a simple nuke that deals damage to all enemies around Quap. Blink lets her teleport to a nearby target location, helping her weave in and out of fights. And her shard makes her deal damage and apply silence in her departure and arrival locations. Shadow Strike lets Quap yeet a poison dagger at an enemy. It deals damage upon landing, but it also applies a debuff that deals damage over time and slows enemy movement. With Scepter, this becomes an AoE targeted spell, and once the debuff ends, or if it's reapplied on an enemy hero, they release a Scream of Pain around themselves. It may sound gimmicky, but it's pretty good. Finally, Sonic Wave is your ultimate. It's a Fusro Da, dealing damage to enemies in an area and pushing them back. For talents, 20 damage at 10, don't ignore your auto attacks to hit surprisingly fast. Shadow Strike damage interval at 15, it helps deal your damage faster. Scream damage at 20, and Blink cooldown at 25. The reason I say that this hero is deceptively hard to use is because new players will think that they have to blink into every engagement, Scream of Pain right next to your enemies, and then have the tankiness to survive if you get caught out and blink out. And while Quap is tankier than your typical int hero, this is not the case at all. To play Quap effectively, you need to know when to go in and how. Spacing is your friend because you're more about weaving in and out of engagements rather than being a full-on frontliner. The bigger issue I see with inexperienced Quap players is they feel they have to be the ones to start fights despite the fact that they have no CC built into their kits. Most of the time, you're also not going to be 100 to 0ing anyone from full HP, unless they're super squishy and you have a Dagon or something, so play to whittle down a foe, then finish them off. Like Puck, you rely on your mobility to stay alive, and you don't fare too well against instant disables like hexes and silences. Once your get out of jail free card is dealt with, you're a sitting duck. But if that's not a problem, Quap can absolutely take over a game. You farm really fast with your screams and right clicks and can be a major damage contributor in a team fight. You also have an above average attack animation and great ganks to boot. With a level advantage, you become one of Dota's strongest tempo setters. Just make sure that your team backs you up by picking CC.
Shadow Fiend.
In my mind, there are 4 classic mid laners in Dota: Invoker, Puck, Queen of Pain, and this guy. And he's completely surpassed his peers to be one of the most dominant mids of the patch. I don't know how long he'll stay on top, but right now, he's there. His innate is Necromastery, giving him a soul every time he kills a unit. With every soul stack, he gains bonus damage, and when he kills an enemy hero, he increases his max soul count until he's killed. When he dies, he loses a portion of these souls as well. This makes SF snowball, giving him good damage for last city in lane once he gets the ball rolling. He also has raises. These take your QWE slots by default, but are treated as a single ability. He deals damage to an area in front of him, with a distance depending on which raise was used. Each raise has its own individual cooldown, and they also apply a stacking debuff, causing affected enemies to take more damage from subsequent raises. The Shadow Miner facet causes raises to apply a stacking slow as well. Shard decreases the cooldown of your raises depending on how many enemy heroes are hit. Now, in addition to having 3 nukes and a pretty good innate, you have 2 other basic abilities and an ultimate too. Feast of Souls is a steroid that gives SF an attack speed boost at the cost of some souls. Use it wisely. Presence of the Dark Lord is another passive, giving him a minus armor aura to nearby enemies. His lasting presence facet makes the minus armor stronger after killing an enemy hero. Finally, Requiem of Souls is his ultimate. After charging up, he releases a number of soul lines depending on how many soul stacks he has. Any unit hit by these soul lines are damaged, slowed, and feared, and get reduced magic resistance. It also causes him to blow up in a Requiem when he dies, but at least these soul lines don't cause fear. Scepter reduces the spell's cooldown and causes the souls to return back to SF, dealing less damage on the return, but healing SF for the damage dealt. For talents, take the raise stack damage at 10, raise damage at 15, Requiem fear at 20, and feast cast speed at 25. SF has all the damage tools in the world, but no mobility. He is a snowballing glass cannon that is strongest with a lead. A Shadow Fiend from behind feels like garbage to play. He needs a bit of space to get the ball rolling, so he's weakest against heroes that can constantly apply pressure or dominate him in lane. Zeus chips him down with his spells, while also being seemingly impossible to kill with his jump, and roamers like Earth Spirit and Spirit Breaker can camp SF at mid lane and ruin his game. I find the Windranger and Lina matchups kinda hard as well, because they have the CC to catch you with a single target burst to blow you up, and of course, they don't have souls because they're gingers. SF is a pub stomper and a snowball hero. A Shadow Fiend that can't gain any momentum is a Shadow Fiend that probably should have picked another hero.
Snapfire! Where are you gonna run?
For talents, take Scatter Blast damage at 10, Shredder hits at 15, Shredder multi-shot at 20, and Shredder damage at 25, and take Ricochet 2 for your facet.
Sniper!
A common misconception about Sniper is that he's a +1 hard carry. Sure, he builds like a typical right-clicker, but he's actually strongest in the mid lane because he wants levels, and he doesn't offer much else to his team outside of raw damage. Sniper's innate gives him bonus attack range scaling with his ultimate. His shrapnel allows him to bombard an area, dealing damage over time, granting vision and implying a slow. You get 3 charges of this ability, giving some pretty good utility. You can use it for scouting, granting vision for your auto attack, sieging high ground, checking Roshan, and more. It also lets Sniper control the wave and ensure that he's not always getting shoved in. The scatter shot facet drastically reduces this ability's duration, but also increases its damage. You trade utility for cheese skill potential. His W is headshot, giving his attacks a chance to apply extra flat damage, briefly slow enemy move and attack speed, and apply a slight knockback effect. Take aim is an active that gives Sniper a 100% headshot chance on his attacks, while also giving bonus attack range at the cost of decreased movement speed for a short time. This iteration also gives Sniper extra armor, which is nice to know if you're getting gone on. Ghillie Suit causes your attacks to not reveal your position for Fog of War as long as you have Take Aim active. Sharp-eyed enemies can still find your location though, since you'll be knocking back enemies in a certain direction anyway. His ultimate Assassinate is a long-range single-target nuke. He marks a target for death, and after a brief delay, he shoots out a powerful shot, dealing his attack damage plus a bit of extra. It's literally Caitlyn ult, except it doesn't get cucked by enemy teammates. If you get a kill, the cooldown is reset, and note that Assassinate doesn't have to deal the killing blow. You can assassinate someone and then right-click on the death after to get the reset. You just have to take credit for the kill. Scepter decreases the wind-up time and causes the shot to apply a stun. Shard gives him a grenade, dealing damage in an area, pushing himself back and knocking away affected enemies while also disarming them. For talents, take the headshot damage at 10, attack speed at 15 is always better because you'll always have the attack speed bonus regardless of whether you have Take Aim active or not. Attack range at 20, and everyone gets the knockback distance at 25, but I really think the charge restore time is much better. That's just me though. Sniper is up there with Phantom Assassin and Pudge for some of the most common picks you'll see in low-level pubs. He's easy to pilot and do well with, and his gimmick of having ridiculous attack range is simple and effective. That being said, he does have pretty clear counterplay. Get on top of him and he should die pretty quickly. There are 2 Sniper builds at the moment. You can go rapid fire right click, building around your autos with Take Aim and Headshot, or you can go Conda Ags and play around your ultimate's burst damage. While I would recommend new players to pick Sniper because of how easy he is to pilot, someone else is likely to pick him first because of his popularity. If the enemy picks him first, pick Spirit Breaker or Spectre instead and watch that snarky smile go away like a father buying milk.
Storm Spirit!
Another one of the Spirit Brothers. This one is blue and like Ember and Earth is incredibly mobile. His innate is Galvanized, a stack based innate that grants him a stack every time he gets a kill. Each stack grants him extra mana regen per stack and some extra permanent mana regen as well. Should Storm die, he loses some of his stacks. Storm also gets a few stacks every time he levels his ultimate, which we'll get to later on. Like his brother, Storm also has a Remnant gimmick. He creates an electric clone of himself that explodes should an enemy get too close, dealing damage in an area. Normally they spawn in place, but the static slide facet causes the Remnant to walk menacingly towards a target area. He also gets Overload, which empowers his next auto attack to apply a brief slow and deal extra damage in an area every time he casts a spell. A neat little trick you'll see Storm players do in lane is to throw out a normal auto attack, then create a Remnant while the hit is mid-air and cause the mid-air attack to apply an Overload, which you'll probably miss because you attacked uphill. Should you choose to buy shards, you can activate this ability to give yourself and your nearby teammates an attack speed buff, as well as causing your next few attacks to apply an overload proc. Electric Vortex is his CC tool. With it, he pulls an enemy closer to him. This ability does not damage on its own, but comboed with Remnant and Overload, Storm can deal some pretty good single target damage. Typically, the combo is pull auto, Q auto. Scepter causes this ability to affect all enemies within the radius around Storm Spirit instead of having it be a targeted ability. It's an electric black hole and has the potential to win you a fight if used correctly. The Shock Collar facet makes the pull apply a debuff that pops an overload on an enemy if they attack. Storm gets his mobility from Ball Lightning. He turns into an electric ball, zipping to a target area and dealing damage to units he passes through, depending on how far he's traveled during the jump. This ability's mana cost depends on Storm's mana pool, and it drains more mana the longer the distance traveled. Oh, and this spell doesn't have a cooldown, so you can zoom to your heart's content as long as you have the mana to support it. For talents, take the mana regen at 10, health at 15, vortex duration at 20, and overload bounds at 25. Because Storm is perpetually mana hungry, you want to stack as much mana regen as possible, gaining galvanized stacks and all. You are a snowball hero, gathering momentum early on and completely dominating the game off a handful of early game kills. Get active around the map, try to make plays, and most importantly, space for your team's carry. Your biggest opponents are Lockdown and Mana Burn. Lion and Nyx have instant CC with their Hex and Carapace and mana drain capabilities, while Anti-Mage has Mana Burn on his autos and blows you up with his ult. Pick Storm if you want to learn Storm. He's a complex hero, but he has a high skill ceiling and is incredibly rewarding to master. You will lose a lot while learning him, but that's all part of the process.
Templar Assassin.
Templar Assassin is another carry style mid laner that mainly offers powerful physical burst damage. She's a ranged hero, but she has similar attack range to Monkey King early on. Her innate side blades gives her bonus attack range while also allowing her attacks to spill onto enemies behind their intended target. This means she can harass while farming in lane with her auto attacks alone. Her Void Blades facet makes her side blade spill damage also apply as slow to affected enemies. Refraction gives Templar a damage barrier that can block up to a set amount of instances of damage. Think of it like an onion, and as Shrek said, an onion has layers. Each layer can block up to a certain amount of damage before breaking, but if all the damage is dealt in one instance, for example, if she gets hit by Lion's Finger, the layer absorbs all of its damage before shattering for the next one, meaning all that damage is just wasted. You also get an attack damage buff for a set amount of hits, and both of these effects function independently from each other, meaning if one gets consumed, the other isn't affected, unless she chooses Refractor. This facet gives her an extra damage charge every time one of her onion layers is peeled back. It's the better facet because you won't always be hitting people with your side blades all the time. Meld lets TA turn invisible, but she has to remain completely still. She can break this invis by attacking an enemy, dealing bonus damage, and reducing their armor for a short period of time. Design-wise, it's intended to be used as a trap type ability, but you can use it in a fight as long as you know your range. It also helps you block certain abilities that get disjointed by invis. It's not the strongest outplay tool, but it's an outplay tool nonetheless. Psionic Trap is her ultimate. It lets her place these circles around the map that can be detonated to apply a slow. The slow is stronger the more time it takes to charge up, and at max charge, the ability deals damage as well. They grant a bit of vision so you can place them in key locations to monitor enemy activity, which are usually the River Runes and the Roche Pit. Shard increases the max trap count and vision radius while also allowing them to silence targets as well. Scepter gives her Psionic Projection, which lets her teleport to a trap after a brief channel, instantly detonating it as if it were fully charged and immediately gaining bonus damage. This, combined with Boots of Travel, makes her a huge global threat, and it functions as a getaway tool as well because you can channel it without breaking meld. For talents, Refraction damage at 10, because how is that even a choice? Side Blade's range at 15 is good, but there are times where you'll want the other one. Refraction Dispels is good if the enemy has a lot of roots and stuff, but the meld reduction helps your burst at 20, and honestly, you can't go wrong with either at 25. I prefer the bash because it gives her a bit of extra CC, but more Q charges is good too. She's not the most powerful pick in the mid lane, but she does pretty well as a counter pick against certain meta mid laners like Puck. How good you are at bullying your lane opponent and controlling the wave depends entirely on how well you manage your side blades. In terms of damage potential, she peaks pretty early, but don't underestimate her in the late game, though you should really be careful of lockdown and damage over time, which are your two biggest foes as TA. If the enemy can somehow get you stunned and destroy your onion, it's usually a bigger death flag than saying you have a family to come home to. And don't let side blades fool you. You are a single target damage dealer and barely do anything when PL Elus or Meepo clones are gangbanging you. Oh, and be careful of Juggernaut. No gameplay reason, it's just they canonically dated before and it's always hard seeing your ex.
Tinker!
Coming off a rework that many thought would kill him as a hero, he's actually alive and kicking in the mid lane, and while he has seen better days, he still works. Sorta. His innate gives him cooldown reduction on his items per point of intelligence, letting him get up to 60% with his current iteration. Laser is his first spell. It deals pure damage to a single target and forces them to miss all their attacks. Scepter upgrades this ability, causing it to bounce to a nearby target, reducing their health and model size. March of the Machines causes Tinker to summon a bunch of little robots to destroy enemy HP bars and people's frame rates. The Repair Bot's facet causes the little bros to heal teammates inside the AoE as well. Defense Matrix is your defensive tool. It gives Tinker's target teammate of choice an all damage barrier and bonus status resistance while it's up. Don't ignore this ability in the laning stage. It makes you trade incredibly well. The Translocator facet makes Tinker blink forward and dispel debuffs once Defense Matrix is broken on him. Shard gives him Warp Flare, causing an opponent to teleport away from Tinker, damaging and rooting them in place while also reducing their attack and cast range for a short period of time. Typically, it's a defensive get off me tool, but I have seen Tinkers use it offensively too. Your ultimate gives you two abilities. The first is Rearm, which lets you reset the cooldown on all your abilities after a brief channel, and Keyed Conveyance, which lets you teleport to a structure, then eventually friendly units, then eventually allied heroes. For talents, March duration at 10, laser damage at 15, status resist at 20, and laser AoE at 25. As Tinker, you are a backline caster, supporting your team through your sustained damage from your robots, coming in with your laser to secure kills and reduce enemy health if you have Ags. Don't forget about your reduced item cooldown either. It affects things like BKB, helping you stay alive in fights. It also boosts your offense through buying items like Hex and Dagon. Blink also gives you incredible mobility and is a must-have every game. Your biggest threat as Tinker is getting caught. Rearm has a cooldown, and if you're found while channeling, you're incredibly vulnerable because of your lack of innate mobility. This means being wary of heroes like Spectre, Spirit Breaker, and Anti-Mage. Tinker is a specialist hero, so he naturally has a steeper learning curve. Pick him if you want to learn how to use him, but at the moment, I wouldn't consider what he offers to be worth overcoming his difficulty.
Void Spirit.
The last of the Spirit Brothers, Void, is a powerful purple pig that slips in and out of existence. His innate gives him an intrinsic edge, giving him extra bonus stats from his attributes. That means more health per point of strength, more attack speed per agility, etc. His Symmetry facet gives him a physical damage barrier whenever his abilities deal magic damage to enemies. As a Spirit Brother, his Remnant gimmick is Ether Remnant, summoning a clone to watch over a specific sightline. If an enemy crosses into said sightline, the Remnant pulls the target closer, rendering them unable to act and dealing some damage. Shard increases the watch range, reduces the cooldown, and causes it to only pull enemy heroes. But don't worry if you want to use it for farming, it still damages regular units if they're within the Remnant's line of sight. Dissimulate causes Void to vanish out of existence and summon a bunch of circles. After a brief delay, Void reappears in a circle of choice, damaging all enemies in the chosen area. You and your teammates can see where you're going to pop up, but your enemies won't, causing them to play an unfortunate game of Whack the Void Spirit. Resonant Pulse causes Void to emit a blast center around his person. Scepter gives you a second charge and causes enemies to hit by this blast to get silenced as well. The Sanctuary facet also makes his ability create an all damage barrier. Astral Step is your ultimate, letting you dash to a target location. Enemies that you dash through are hit with an auto attack and are also applied a mark. The mark slows targets hit and then erupts after a brief delay to deal extra damage. You also get 2 charges, giving you a lot of mobility, especially combined with your W. For talents, take the Remnant damage at 10, Resonant Pulse damage at 15 unless you need the True Sight, Astral Step charge restore time at 20, and Astral Step crit at 25. Void Spirit is a damage dealer through and through, and his slippery nature as one of the Spirit Brothers makes him incredibly hard to kill as well. But Void's damage is almost entirely magic. Heroes like Huskar completely destroy him, and you don't have a lot of options against targets with the BKB. As one of the spirits, you need to be able to cast your spells to stay alive, so be wary of picking him against silences and mass CC.
Zeus.
The last mid laner I'll be covering, Zeus, is a backline caster that's surprisingly hard to kill considering his archetype. His innate is Static Field, meaning all of his spells and attacks deal a percentage of their target's current health as extra damage. This means Zeus's spells will always hurt. His Livewire facet increases the amount of damage enemies take from his innate the closer they are to him. I don't like this facet. You're primarily a backliner and you'd normally want to be as far away from your enemies as possible. Arc Lightning is your point and click nuke that bounces between enemy units. It's great for securing last hits in lane, and in fights, it's a great way to proc your Static Field on enemies. Shard gives you bonus attack speed and causes all your attacks to proc a mini Arc Lightning. Lightning Bolt is his W, dealing damage and applying a mini stun to a target. This ability can be ground targeted, and it also grants unobstructed vision and true sight in a target area for a brief duration. It's great for de-warding and dealing with enemy invis heroes. Scepter gives him Nimbus, letting him summon a Storm Cloud in a target area anywhere on the map. The Storm Cloud will cast a Lightning Bolt on the enemy closest to the center, and enemies can destroy the Storm Cloud with auto attacks to remove the effect. Heavenly Jump lets Zeus jump in the direction he's facing, shocking the closest nearby enemy unit, prioritizing heroes, dealing damage and applying a slow. He also gets unobstructed vision around himself after using this ability for a short time. Most Zeuses will use this defensively as a getaway tool. Thunder God's Wrath is your ultimate. It deals damage to all enemy heroes and grants vision and true sight over them. If they are invisible when the spell is popped, they take no damage, but the vision still remains. Divine Rampage makes this ability deal damage to one enemy hero at a time, starting from the enemy with lowest HP to the highest. If an enemy is killed by this ability, the damage dealt to subsequent enemies is also increased. For talents, take the jump cooldown at 10 for more mobility, jump move speed at 15 for the same reason, arc lightning damage at 20, and the AoE lightning bolt at 25. Your job as Zeus is clear as day. Stay in the back, don't get caught, and use your point and click abilities to top the damage charts. Over the course of a single fight, you naturally deal a ton of damage thanks to your arc, bolt, and innate, so just don't die, man. Use your ultimate to secure kills from around the map. Your teammates might think it's kill stealing, but Zeus is a tempo mid laner that falls off in the late game once BKBs and pipes and, god forbid, unwavering conditions start to come out. To counter a Zeus, you'll need a lot of catch, and I mean a lot of it. Once you blow your jump, you're out of a mobility tool for quite a while, so the spirits can make quick work of you with their insane mobility and burst damage. Anti-mage is also quite good against you since he shrugs off your damage and can blink on top of you, burn your mana, and blow you up. But if you play safe and stay in the backline, it's very easy to do well with Zeus. This hero plays himself, but don't pick him if your team needs some CC. And that's it for the mid laners. I doubt I'll be doing an off-meta episode because, to be completely honest with you, I don't think it's a good idea to recommend new players to pick something off-meta while they're still learning the fundamentals. That being said, these are your typical mid laners, so treat them like suggestions. If you're good enough, you can make anything work. This is just a good starting point. With this video, I'll have covered the supports, the off-laners, and the mid laners, and the carries are coming up real soon. So don't miss out on that. Leave a like if you learned something, a comment if you want to say something, and subscribe if you haven't already. Ace out!